All right, good afternoon, everybody. If you're joining us, you're in the right place because we want you here. This is Arizona Foundation for Women, and we have a She Talks webinar today. And we're going to wait just a couple minutes to get started so that people, as they log on, they can go ahead and log on. If they have any glitches or anything, then they can jump off and jump back on. So we'll begin in like 1 minute. So just hang tight. And if anybody is listening while they're driving and they're in rain, be careful. Arizona doesn't know how to act when we have that stuff falling from the sky. All right, so I will go ahead and get started. Like I just mentioned, welcome, happy half afternoon. Let's see, it's Wednesday, it's hump day, so you're on your way to the end of the week. My name is Monica Lindstrom, and I am a board member with Arizona Foundation for Women. And I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. This is our next in our She Talks series, which we have entitled Healing Through Humanities. And the reason why we called it that is because a lot of us, if not all of us, went through at least some level of trauma or pain going through the pandemic, whether it was losing somebody, losing a job, just being isolated at home. And so we thought that the She Talk series that we have every year, we wanted to really reach out to everybody and help women in our community. And we thought that giving examples and talks and tools to use to get through the healing process from everything that everybody went through would be a wonderful way to fulfill our mission and to reach out to people. So it's called Healing Through Humanities. And today's event topic is Healing Through Practice, a Hopi Woman's Perspective. And I want to thank Valora there. You can see her, Valora Imus Nasanhoya. She's going to be our speaker today. And I'm so excited about this because sometimes in our lives, a lot of time in our lives, we are so focused on our own lives that we don't see what other cultures go through and some of the practices that other cultures have, other women have to get through things that we could use ourselves, and we can learn from each other. And women, we have a great history of learning from each other and just talking like a bunch of girlfriends. And you can have a lot of healing through that. And Valora and I were just talking about that before we came on. So we also want to thank Arizona Humanities. That's the organization who provided Arizona Foundation for Women a grant for this year's She Talks series. And without that, we wouldn't have been able to have such an incredible series. Let's see. So let me go ahead and talk about what She Talks is. So Arizona Foundation for Women is a nonprofit that really focuses on Arizona's women and helping them in all aspects of their lives. We like to say that we rap to she, which means through research, advocacy, and philanthropy, we focus on the safety, health, and economic empowerment of Arizona women. That's where we get the she, the SHE, safety, health, and economic empowerment. These She Talks is a way for us to fulfill part of our mission to reach out to women in our community and provide them with things to think about and tools and ways to better the she, right? Their safety, health, and economic empowerment. So normally before pandemic, right, we would have these events in person, but we learned through the pandemic that we had to switch. We did a lot on webinars. And so we're keeping this series as a hybrid. So we've had a couple online like we're doing now, and then we've had a couple in person. And so we like being able to get back in touch with everybody, but we also realize that people are able to enjoy this when they can take a break from work, right, at lunch. And it's much easier to attend something as special as this when it's in webinar style, so more people can be involved. So I already mentioned we wrap to she. So the mission of Arizona Foundation for Women is advancing the status of Arizona's women through the research, advocacy, and philanthropy. And through that, and because of that, we hear on a daily basis at AFW people saying, how can we help? How can we be involved? This is such an incredible group, and it's a great mission. And there's a couple different ways you can become involved. Number one, we have many committees and events that you can volunteer for. If you only have a little bit of time, reach out to us and let's see how you can volunteer and help us out. Number two, you can also become a member. What's great about AFW's membership is that you don't get all the foo-foo pens and pencils and folders and that kind of stuff. You get the opportunity to be involved in Arizona's community and to use your money and put with other like-minded individuals so you can make a bigger impact. So that membership can be as low as $10 a month. And of course, you can check with your tax professionals, but as a nonprofit, that is considered a charity. And so you could have some tax benefits for that as well. So all you have to do is go onto our website, azfw.org, for more information about volunteering and becoming a member. It's also a really neat Christmas present or Hanukkah present, giving somebody the gift of membership to be involved in an organization like this. Lastly, we also have our She Partners program, which is really, really awesome. That is, we like to partner with corporations out there, companies, LLCs, entities out there that have similar missions or want to be involved in our mission. And we collaborate with them and do some different things with them, bring their employees in, bring awareness to Arizona's community for women. And we even have this incredible series called She Leads. And if you go to our website, you will see what our She Leads is. It's a leadership program. And we have a lot of valley and statewide corporations and companies that are involved in that because they're aligned with our mission. So for more ways to get involved and learn about AFW, go to azfw.org, Arizona Foundation for Women.org. We've got a lot of really great information there. So now I want to go ahead and get into exactly why we're here. And that is to hear this incredible woman that you hear on the screen, or you see on the screen, her story about healing. Valora Imas Nasanhoya. She is a member of the Hopi tribe. She's founder and executive director of the Hongwangsi Consulting Services, and she'll tell us about that as well. She's also CEO of the Wow. Did I say that? Omau Resource Center. She'll talk to us about that as well. She's an associate with the National Criminal Justice Training Center of Fox Valley Technical College, so she's a scholar as well. Study coordinator for the Arizona State Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Ad Hoc Committee. That's something that a lot of people don't know about, so maybe you could explain that to us as well. And of course, the Director of Communication Engagement with ASU Research on Violent Victimization Lab. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Health Promotion from NAU. Go Jacks! Yes, that's right. Love me some NAU. And her Master's in Criminal Justice with an emphasis in legal studies from Grand Canyon University. So she loves Arizona, I can tell. All right, with over 20 years in direct victim service, program development, implementation, including policy development, grant proposal writing, and financial management, you really have done a lot. You are really involved with the community here, and our community is so lucky to have you. So welcome. I'm very excited to hear from you and this perspective that you can bring to us. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and share with us, and then also drop in and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what these organizations are.
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as we go forward. I'm very honored to be a part of She Talks today with the Arizona Foundation for Women. And yes, I love Arizona. This is where I'm from. I've been very privileged to be able to do all that I have, in terms of, what you've read. And it's been an adventure for me. And it's also been an experience, being Indigenous, being away from home, and learning so much so that I could be able to provide this to our communities as well. So I'm gonna share with you today. Well, first of all, let me do this. I wanna also share with you that my Hopi name, my birth given name, and my womanhood name is Hunwensi. And it means a lot to me because Hunwensi is from the Bear Clan, which is our highest clan leadership in Hopi. And Hunwensi means standing bear woman. So I feel like I have a lot of responsibility, not only to myself and my family and my clan, but also to the Bear Clan, to be able to respect them and honor them to the highest ability as I can, by representing them as well. And my name, Valora, comes from my maternal and paternal grandmothers, Valentine and Laura. So, I want to share how privileged I am in what I have accomplished so far. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you my experiences, working in getting to where I am. And some of these experiences might trigger some of you. So please take care of yourselves as we go on through the presentation today. I feel it's an opportunity for me, and it's an opportunity for you to also learn and understand why I do what I do. And a lot of my stories are coming from my own trauma, and my own healing as well. So at the end, we will share some information, contact information with you. If you do need some assistance to help with maybe I re-traumatized you, get you some help. So we're gonna get started now. So as we look at this mural painting, it's by a couple artists from my village, Shnopavi, Michael Kabodi and Delbert Chanani. It's titled Journey of the Human Spirit, which they narrate the history of the Hopi people from the myth of emergence to the arrival of Europeans to the rebirth of Hopi traditions in the information age. When we remember and think about who we are and where we come from, regardless of what tribe or what ethnicity you are, it brings so many questions and sometimes some uncertainty of who we are. And the question may come from our experiences of trauma. We may experience and not be able to recognize, acknowledge, or accept these experiences as trauma. For myself, trauma wasn't even a word to me growing up. I knew nothing about trauma as a kid, not until I began the work around victim services. So again, today I will share with you my perspective, my journey, my story of how I was able to process and be who I am today as a resilient Hopi woman. So first, I'm going to share with you that, this is my great-grandparents, Peter Novamsa Sr. He was our first Hopi tribal chairman, and we have a lot of gratitude to him because he also instilled education to his children. His children passed it on generation to generation, and education is a big part of our world today. And from what I learned, just talking to family and the history of who he was, he was between this world as well, between being a traditionalist, but also exploring what is it in this new world. And we call it today, we are able to live in two worlds, our traditional world and this world I live in here in the Valley. My great-grandmother, Polly Novamsa, she was an amazing woman. I give her a lot of credit for us and in our family as women to be strong, to have this will to be able to take care of our families. But not only that, she was very welcoming of other people. strangers that come into her home, and she's very quick to feed them. One of the memories I have of her is her making biscuits, and to this day nobody can make biscuits like she has. And Mama, I know you've tried, but it's just not as good as so those are the memories that we hold to heart. um, and also my grandparents, Chester Johns, who was Navajo, and my grandmother Valentine, bless her heart, she's still alive with us. She is 100 years old, and she's also instilled in me my independence for higher education, my independence to be able to be a strong-willed woman. And I'm very proud that she's been present with me. She's seen all my achievements and my accomplishments through life, not only as a child, but even when I had my children, all the way up to higher education. She was present at all of my graduations. And and then my parents, Carol James and Norbert Imus. My mom is my heart, obviously. And, she's another strong-willed woman. And my dad is is Wallapai, so he's not Hopi. So I learned a lot of things from my mom, and even today, we've gone through so much in our lives recently that I have so much more respect for my mom in her own strength and willingness to live. I also have, this is the first baby picture of myself I've ever seen in my life in creating this PowerPoint. So, I was like, oh, wow, I've never seen a baby picture of myself. But I was born on March 21st in Kings Canyon, Arizona. I'm the second born and the only daughter to my mother. As mentioned, my father wasn't Hopi, so I was given to my grandfather, Lawrence Sufki, who is Bear Clan, and the husband to my grandmother, sister Gazilda. His mother, Ruby Sufki, took care of me, and his family accepted me as their child by honoring me on the 20th day by introducing me to our father's son and sharing Hopi names I received from the women of the Bear Clan. This was the beginning of my emergence into this world, and this is where Hunwensi name comes from, by my uncle or my grandfather Lawrence Sufki, who named me. Because as Hopi people, we're all related, we all have some kind of significance to each other. But throughout my young life, there was some things that had happened. I truly don't understand when and how I really came into my other parents, who I call my mom and dad, Ross and Betty Tuangwaitiwa. But through this time, I always reflect back and like, who was I? And like I remember myself being so shy. I remember myself being alone all the time at home, growing up, but my parents, Betty and Ross, they took me everywhere. And, my dad is from another village called Munkapi, and his family have also taken me into their lives as well. So, I have another family there, which I'm very happy to have all of these families in my life, from different clanships, from, just having a variety of individuals in my life. But one of the significant things that I also learned or had growing up was, I mentioned that I couldn't go anywhere at all. In order for me to play, my because they helped me wash a huge pile of dishes before I went to go play. And I had to be home before the sun went down. So every day, or when I went to go play, I would be racing home to beat this sun. So that, because that's when I get in trouble if I wasn't home by then, or before 5 o'clock, when I knew my mom would be coming home from work. So these things is what I remember of my childhood. But something had happened. Something happened in my life when I was 3 to 6 years old. Um, I didn't know what it was, but I knew within me, in my heart, my mind, and my spirit, I knew something happened, and I just couldn't place it. And so as I go on through life, as a young woman, I began participating in our social dances, in which these dances are very special to young women, to young girls, because this is the only time that you can dance. And I don't remember a lot of pictures of myself. So creating this PowerPoint, some of these pictures are the first time that I'm seeing a lot of my pictures as a child, or even as a young woman. So these were times where I felt happy. I felt like I was part of Hopi, because I was always teased that my dad was not Hopi, and I was always teased that my mom was part Navajo, And I remember those times and that teasing, and it hurt. Um, but again, through this time, I still had this thing about something happened. Something happened to me. And another incident happened at this time. This picture is a picture of this incident when I was at this stage of my life. I believe I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school. And this something had happened that I will share with you. So a lot of things within these statements about something that has happened, these are words. This is my word cloud of things that had happened. There was a lot of violence that happened. And what happened at the 3 to 6 month old was that, I was molested. That was the something that happened at 3 to 6 months that I just couldn't put together at the time. Um, I was bullied. I was neglected at home. Um, I was always scared. But I also, because of this, I developed bulimia. At the time, I didn't know what it was. And learning about it and going through it and this young of a life, like I really didn't understand what was going on. And I didn't put everything together until I got into my first few years of college after high school, and it worsened. And throughout that time, up until um, about 2000, maybe about 2003, when I kind of was taking um, an ability to control that, that I really understood why I was having bulimia. Um, but I do want to share with you some things about trauma, is that individual trauma is results in that physical harm, some life-threatening harm, and some emotional harm. And it also affects us, in all of our mental health, our emotions, our spirituality, and these are some things that, we learn, I learned through SAMHSA. Many of us know SAMHSA, but it addresses the impact of trauma on individuals, our families, and even our communities through the processes of healing and recovery. But who is affected? All of us. There's no boundaries as to who is affected by trauma. We have historical trauma that many of us have in our own lives, in our own families. But these experiences, for adults and children in our communities, especially in the lives of people who have and have developmental and substance use disorders, and these are something that's not new, but it's something that has been much more apparent to me. That I always say that we mask this hurt, this trauma by our substance use, but because we're not addressing our trauma, so it's like this overlaying layer over and below it is our trauma and all of our hurt and our pains. So this is some of the reasons for me, that we need to address trauma, not only for ourselves but those that we work with. And the effects of trauma, is that it places this heavy burden on us. We as people who experience these traumatic events, go through our lives without these lasting negative effects. We have difficulties and these experiences of our traumatic stress reactions. But one of the things that I think about as well is how we respond to a traumatic experience is our own. It's very personal. We have to have a strong support system in place. We have to have, some type of something or someone who's going to empower us to pull us out. And I found that. And you're going to hear about that as well. Um, so in 2009, between 2009 and 2011, a lot of things that happened in my life. I began to ask myself questions. I began to ask people questions. During this time, I was going through a very traumatic divorce. So was my son. My son had an effect of this that I for the victim specialist position for BIA with the Department of Interior Office of Law Enforcement Security. And we basically ran away. We didn't have a home to live in. I'm so gracious, my aunt allowed us to stay in her home for a while. That I was able to do this. But, I also met my husband, Brandon, and we always ask the questions to each other, why us? Why are we together? We're not even similar. And many people will say that to us, but we share visions. And I'm gonna share a little bit more about that as well. But my visions that I had, and I say their visions, their dreams, their thoughts, I didn't know what they were. They weren't necessarily nightmares, but it was things that made me think a lot about, why am I having these? So I began working with a peer coach. I began, therapy, so that I could work on myself. So one statement paragraph that I put together through my process is, I'm going to read this to you. I am 5 years old, and then sitting in the backseat of a car. I feel his legs over me, the pressure holding me down. I hear slapping, I hear crying, and I am terrified. Don't look, he says. I'm not going to look, but I can see it in my mind. My stepdad is hitting my mom again. So this statement, I've carried these visions my entire life. It wasn't until this time of 2009 to 2011 when it began to become more intense. It was more frightening, almost to the point that where I felt like I was haunted by it because it was very frequent, and I didn't understand it. It wasn't a time until I sat with my mom and my brother and asked them, I told them about this, but it was a true vision. It was a time where my brother protected me from seeing what my mom was going through. I've never seen her physically been hit or abused, but I heard it. And I told my brother once, I'm sure he don't remember, but I wish I seen it, but at the same time, I'm glad he protected me. He does, he protects me like a brother, even as old as I am today, as old as we are. So these are some of my, um, you know, for me, one of the reasons why I do advocacy, because many of us have these visions and these dreams that we don't know why we're having. This is my experience. So when I came down here in 2009, as mentioned, I was the first victim specialist. I did this work to prove the need, that BIA needed a victim assistance program. And we were able to prove that need. We obtained over $1 million to hire and secure victim specialists throughout Indian country. I also was a specialist, and through this funding, we were able to hire I think about 11 victim specialists to work in Indian country. And, I have the love of advocacy. I remember the time since 2003, where this passion just developed, and to today, it's just strengthened with all that I do. Um, and, with that, in 2018, I left BIA and created Honuansi. My goal was to meet the gaps of services our families and survivors were unable to receive due to tribal, state, federal, whether it was their grant conditions, their stipulations, their programmatic policies. Many families were not being serviced. But we also did training and technical assistance to victim service programs in their development, strategic planning, and some direct services. I also expanded our minds and opportunities to develop this positive and lasting relationship with our tribal leadership, learning governmental practices and purposes for our people. This is a continued effort, but the best practice is to be present. And I do hope to move back home to Hopi. Another area within Hunwensi is our youth and men empowerment program. These are pictures of our football camp that we held, and our coaches were not only professional coaches, but they were also Hopi High School football alumni who came to Hopi to coach these students and these football players. It was an amazing experience. And we also heard stories of some of these kids who shared what was happening in their community and their homes. So, we've grasped all these conversations, and we're continuing to improve these services for our youth as well. Monica had mentioned about, the work that we do around missing and murdered. So we also created Bring Our Relatives Home. Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, my work in that was with former Representative Winona Benali, to which she asked if I could assist her in this movement for Arizona. And Representative Germain and Senator Steele were also in this movement. There were 4 or 5 of us who waited 8 hours or more to stand before the Judiciary Committee and testify why this is important, not only to us, but also for many Arizona tribes and our members. So we've been addressing missing and murdered, for a long time. We just named it homicide, kidnapping, and abduction. Through this movement from Canada into the lower 48, we continued doing this work. But with Hunwensi, we created a missing person search program to assess families who have loved ones missing. And because adult missing persons isn't a crime, they were receiving minimum or no response from different agencies. And we did our best to help these families. We did bring home loved ones to their families. We did find some closure for some of these families. We continue to do this work. This is, and now working with ASU Research on Violent Victimization, I'm continuing these efforts with them as well, more at a research perspective, but also continuing these tribal leadership relationships so that they know exactly what we're doing as well. And, we want to be transparent with our tribal communities. So through these processes and the work that I've done, my healing really took into effect in many ways. Through my work and my past reflections, I took some time for some professional therapy, being in the advocacy role, supporting victims to consider therapy. And it's easy to say that. It's easy to tell a survivor, here's some opportunities for therapy. Here's a referral for therapy. Go to group, go to do this, but I had to do it for me. And I had to do it because I wanted to experience what our survivors were going through too, and it was the same, what I see within them. Oh, they take this piece of paper, another referral. Great. Now I'm like, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to get there? All these, things that I also experience, which gives me much more opportunity to build some of these programs for our survivors. Through this experience, it did increase my resiliency. And I want it to be an example to survivors that we can work on ourselves through healing so we can do so much more without these heavy burdens. Um, I'm going to share with you as well, my healing. Um, in our Hopi culture, we practice through ceremony, through prayer. You know, these pictures here are young women who are learning how to make piki bread. Piki bread is one of our staple foods in our culture. It's made out of blue cornmeal and it's made over a hot stone. I'm going to show you a video sample of it shortly. But through this was a time for me to get to know myself. We make piki bread in what we call a piki house, and it's a room with the piki stone like you see. And it's a time that you are alone. You seldom have drop-ins from like maybe my mom or other family member or friends that come and sit with you and talk. But for me, this was a place where I found my solitude. It was just me and my mind. So you'll hear it as I play this video shortly, but the sound of the wood crackling in the fire, the sizzling of the batter as you lay it on top of this hot stone, these were things that, were very precious to me. I heard everything. Um, and I sat just like these girls are. The two side pictures are my mom's piki house, and this was one of the places that I did learn how to make piki. As you sit there, I talked to my Pali soul, I talked to my Betty mom. I prayed to them and talked to them to give me the ability to not get lazy, because this takes at least 3 to 4 hours sometimes to do a bowl of piki batter. And to keep me strong through whatever I was doing. But it also was a place where I can sit and cry, because this was a place where I found safety. Um, I'm also I also was able to, and I was honored to be able to assist my sister in a womanhood ceremony for our grandgirls. And it's been a grateful experience learning how to make piki, and because we were able to teach our daughters and our grandchildren. So I'm going to stop this for a second, and I'm going to share with you um, a short video as to what this might sound like. So it is just a short video, and what I wanted to capture in this video is that the sound of that fire, this the wood that was crackling, the laughter that was part of it. This was just something that, like, I mean, I had to be the strong sister throughout this whole time, and not letting my sister know like how much pride I had in her, and how we were able to just be with each other for a whole week. And it was just a great experience, and I'll never forget that time. But this was the result of our whole week. And these are our granddaughters, and they were going through their womanhood ceremony. And the experience highlighted to me even more the importance of my role as a Hopi woman. But being a female, especially a Hopi female, brings so much pride. It gives you so much self-worth, in who we are as Hopi women, who we are in as Hopi girls growing into Hopi women. We were able to teach the skills that we learned growing up, from our grandmothers, from our mothers, to our granddaughters. Um, and it's tough. It's up at 3, go to bed until late at night. We do this for 4 days. And but it was also a time where it was just time for us. We got to know the girls more. They got to know us more, and we all have a stronger bond now, which is what I really, really appreciate through these experiences that I've had with them. And I reflect back again on my grandmothers, not only Valentine, Tiny, but Molly Sewell as well, because that's who I grew up with. They taught me everything that I know today. And my mothers, Betty and Carol, who have taught me everything that I know today. And I want to be able to share this with my children, my grandchildren. And, all of this healing is because of my daughters, Priscilla, my God, my Riley, and because they are also the role that I have, but also my sons. I may not be able to guide and teach them, but I know some things that I'd be able to probably help them with, but I also, honor them in why I do what I do, why my healing has come this far. Um, but part of not survival, but my healing was that my post-traumatic growth, that loss and trauma are part of my life. We hear a lot about these post-traumatic stress, that it's a normal response to some awful experiences, but many of us don't recognize these struggles and these hardships. But we can be positive and change these experiences as a result of our struggles with a much more challenging life event that's much more positive as well. So, this is the benefits of these stronger relationships, this greater awareness of your new possibilities, increasing your personal strength, your spiritual strength, and your deeper appreciation for life. And that's what I believe that my growth is about. Um, and many of us are going through so much in our lives, but also the benefits of our post-traumatic growth is to develop these strong relationships, to be able to have this awareness of our new possibilities, increase these personal strengths. But again, lastly, this greater appreciation for life. And I say this very boldly because my mom went through kidney transplant, and that was an experience in itself. I never thought I could go through that. Through her transplant, she wanted to give up, but we kept talking to her. And I don't know, I already lost my Betty mom, and I wasn't ready to lose a mother. And that was the hardest time for me in my life so far, is seeing my mom wanting to give up. But we had to all come together as a family and tell her, what, you still have us here, and she was able to persevere through this kidney transplant, and she's still with us today. She's still feisty as ever. She's gotten her chickens back because during that time her chickens had died, her garden had died, so she's bringing all of these things back. And it's really great to see that in her. um, and for us, I'm very proudful that I can see my generation, my grandmother, my mother, myself, and my daughter, through all of that we've gone through in our lives and my life. So this is my new word cloud, that I'm empowered, I've forgiven, I have my spiritual and cultural strengths back. Um, but I also want to share, that my husband, Brandon, I don't know why, I told him that I was molested, but he don't remember. He never remembers. But I remember him telling me that it was okay. Um, and I don't know, I creating this, I had to ask myself, why him? And I still don't have an answer, but I did know that, we came together for a reason. We have a purpose together. We do so much great work together. But when he told me it was okay, he didn't judge me. He didn't tell me or push me away, which I think that was my fear, and it just came out naturally. And since that day, I'm able to say and talk about some of this trauma. Um, so, my healing, is understanding my trauma, that it is a part of my life, but I don't have to make it so traumatic in that it's going to cause me these negative hardships, but I had to work through it. Nobody wants to experience trauma, but unfortunately, within all of us as Indigenous people, we do have this historical trauma through colonization, but sometime and somewhere, we all have to find it within us that we got to stop this. There is opportunity. There are people you can talk to. There is a way, whether it's your cultural and spiritual strengths that you pull from within you. Um, and, it was my mother, Betty, who put me through all of this. I remember the day she asked me if this really happened to me, the molestation happened to me. And she was making piki. And she told me, she said, um, she rolled me a piki and she told me to eat it. I wasn't hungry, but she asked me to eat it. So I did. And as I sat there, I was almost done. And she asked me if it was true what had happened. And I said, yes. And we cried, and she asked me to come to her. She wanted to hug me, and I always remember her words, and what she said to me that day. She said, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I didn't know, and I didn't stop it. She also said, and I told her, it's okay, Mom. I'm okay, and it's not your fault. But the one thing that she also told me is she was getting down, we were cleaning up, and I was going home, and she was going home. And we got into the house, and I was giving her another hug. And she said, Mando, she said, you do good in life, and don't let this stop you. So she also gave me this strength, me not knowing at the time, but she did. She told me to keep going, and this is my story to healing in action. And what this means is taking action to help me heal. When we as survivors are on a healing journey, we're breaking free of that hold that a person or an act of violence has in our lives. We take back control from those who depend on our silence, and we realize that many ways violence penetrates our society, we become more likely to recognize its dynamics and better equipped to interrupt them. This is something that I also learned, but together we have the power to shift our culture and build safer futures. So in conclusion, I share with you my experiences of trauma, not because of, not only the acceptance, but all of these people in my life and how I became to who I am is because one, I had to believe this happened to me. I had to accept this happened to me. So I was empowered. I'm now resilient. And I'm now living what we call our traditional vision and values of a Hopi. And one of these values is what we call Gepsi. It's respecting to the highest degree of our moral standards and ethics. Sumitnawa is to come together to do these activities for the benefit of everyone. Namitnawa, helping one another or giving aid in times of need without having to be asked. And Hitanangwa, which is to take care of something without having to be instructed, asked, or reminded. And lastly, Pasinamwa is to have the characteristics, qualities of humility, modesty, and patience. And this was written by one of our clan uncles as well. And I hold this true, and I hold this heart to my heart, And I share this with my children because with all good intentions of prayer, positiveness, and hope for better things in not only my life, but your life. So thank you for listening to my story today.
Well, Laura, that was very special. Thank you for sharing that with us. There's not much more I can say other than thank you. You clearly opened up your heart, not only to us today, but in your community and in your activities. I think you're a very loving individual that is trying to give back to the community and learn from what happened to you and help others. And we are so lucky to have you here in Arizona doing things like that. When you were explaining things to us, one of the things you mentioned was SAMHSA, SAMSA. You mentioned it when you were talking about trauma impacts. What was that again?
That's SAMHSA. That's
SAMHSA.
that's the National Substance Abuse Mental Health.
Okay.
It's SAMHSA.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That was a question that our community had. There was so much that you talked about. I wanted to just touch on a couple things. You were talking about trauma, and I think that you really brought it home that trauma is subjective, right? What happens to me and how it affects me could affect you very differently. It could be trauma to me. It could just be a speed bump to you. But how we deal with that and how we help others deal with it is so very important. And one way that you were able to deal with it and be resilient was that you seemed to anchor and ground yourself in your family, in your clanship, in your history. Did I get that right?
Yes. I think that, and I can just sum it up quickly as well is, trauma, because of the work I do with victim and survivors, as an advocate, many of us may not have experienced these, or many of us do not recognize it when we start this work. And then we start to feel it and hear it from our own survivors and our victims. So we do get re-traumatized, but when is it that we find the time to address ourselves, right? So, these are some things that, I've had to put into practice. Like I mentioned earlier, I can give any survivor or victim all the resources that they need. I can sit with them for hours and talk about whatever it is, and I can go home okay. Or at least I thought I was going home okay. But who was seeing it were my children, my husband, to where I also just I'm so quiet, but I think I've always been quiet. Everybody knows me to be a quiet person, I think, and that was my time where, maybe they felt left out, maybe they felt like I didn't care, but those were the times where I had to just find that time for myself too, but because of my work and the confidentiality in my work, I couldn't share a lot of that with them.
Yeah.
But they learned to just accept it because of my work. And I can't thank them enough for allowing me and accepting that and accepting me in what I do.
And family is so important. And even if it's not your biological family, right? It's your girlfriends, your guy friends, your best friends, they're there. They can become your family. And I think that that's something that you brought out as well. Another question we had was, I know forgiveness is part of healing. We hear that often. But how do we do so when that person apologized, but just doesn't seem remorseful? Like they did it just for show, but they don't really seem to feel apologetic, right? So how would you recommend someone deals with that?
So I did share my story, in when I had something happen with my young self. So I was also drug-induced rape. I never knew that until in 2018, when this person saw me in the community and wanted to tell me something. And he told me, it was a guy that I did like in high school. um, and I do remember him coming to visit me, but I don't remember anything. I remember waking up the next morning in my bed. It wasn't until that day in 2019, I want to say, that he told me what happened. And he said, I want to tell you I'm sorry, but this is what I did. I mean, he told me everything in detail. And he said, I just want to tell you, and I hope you forgive me. Um, I was shocked. I really didn't know how to handle that. A few years later, he passed. I never had the opportunity to even, I don't know if I ever wanted to, but to come back and ask him like why, because I don't remember asking him why. Um, but I would have never known that I was drug induced rape if he didn't tell me. And when he passed, I just prayed for him and his journey. And I told him, that I forgave him and go into on your journey to the next world. But it's easier in that sense because he's not here no more. I don't get to see or face him anymore.
Right.
But that forgiveness that we have is just part of that healing that we have to have somewhere. And many of us will never ever forgive person who hurt us, right? But for us to be able to be on this healing path, especially for those of us who work with people, who work with similar experiences, how do we give the services to them when we can't be healed ourselves? Which was why I had to go on my journey. It was a tough journey, but I had to because I felt like it was also helping everybody that I served.
Just one last question for you. What are some practices that our listeners, our viewers, our community here might be able to use to help them navigate through loss and trauma? You talked a lot about that connection to your family. You talked about making that peaky bread with your loved ones. Do you have any other suggestions that others might be able to use, or that you found one was better than another?
Yeah, so all of us will have our own experiences, and just for our everyday word is finding that hobby. Is it journaling? Is it baking? Is it, what is it that we find that makes us feel safe? For me, that's the biggest thing is whatever we do, that makes us feel safe. It gives us the opportunity to share. And I believe that the more we voice whatever is bothering us and holding us inside, every time we say this in a word or a phrase or a sentence, we're releasing all of that negativity. We're releasing all that bad medicine, and it's going off wherever it needs to go to, right? So, just find that within you, whatever it is, because many of us might not relate to therapeutic counseling. Many of us might not have the time or even the financial to be able to pay for therapeutic counseling, but many of us, we might not be indigenous, but we have our way. We find it somewhere, and it's probably in a hobby. Many survivors telling me my hobby is the best thing that I ever do rather than counseling, and teaching somebody else, so that's gonna be my best advice for now.
I think that's great advice. And Valora, I want to thank you so much on behalf of AFW for sharing this part of your life with us. This hour has been very insightful, and I really can't explain it. It's just been very touching. And we are so, like I said before, lucky to have you in our community. We will have Valora's information on our website if you would like to reach out to her and her organizations and see more about what she does, maybe get in touch with her. And I want to say thank you so much to Arizona Humanities for giving AFW a grant to be able to put on this She Talks series and these Healing Through Humanities. We will be sending out some information via email to all of you that talks about AFW and our next events. And like I said, Valora's information. Again, if you want to become part of AFW, there's several ways you can volunteer and do that. So just visit azfw.org. And Valora, again, from all of us here at AFW, thank you so much for your time. And everybody else, you have a wonderful, looks like rainy afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. All right.
Thank you so
bye-bye.
much, Monica and Trisha, for having me.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.